Have you ever imagined yourself in a place that no one else can reach? A place full of mystery, secrets, and wild nature, far from the crowds. From an island where the native inhabitants live in complete isolation and kill anyone who tries to visit, to a cursed village where the residents die before reaching the age of 35. Imagine if I told you there's a country that has never recorded a single case of COVID-19. That place is Nauru, the smallest republic in the world. Its size is 21 square kilometers, but that's not the only record Nauru holds. With annual visits not exceeding 200 tourists, Nauru is the least visited country in the world. One of the reasons for the low number of tourists is its disastrous past. About 200 years ago, Europeans discovered phosphate deposits and turned the entire beautiful island into a massive mine. But when the phosphate reserves ran out in the 1990s, all that was left was a devastated environment. Today, Nauru is barren, and 80% of the island is covered in limestone. The mining also polluted the water and destroyed the ancient coral reefs. With no other economic resources to rely on, the country now suffers from poverty and unemployment. The lack of facilities and poor infrastructure make it an unpopular tourist destination. Speaking of islands, the next place is North Sentinel Island, where the indigenous people have lived in complete isolation for more than 30,000 years. This island is officially under Indian control. But if you try to ask the people living there, they might kill you. In 2018, they killed an American tourist who tried to visit the island. John Allen Chow, who was 26 years old, paid fishermen to take him to the island. The fishermen warned him not to go, but he didn't listen. When he arrived, the locals killed him with arrows on the spot. Even the indigenous groups living near the island are wary of the North Sentinelese. They've lived apart for so long that they don't even understand each other's language. But some people still make the mistake of visiting the island. In 1771, British soldiers who were shipwrecked ended up on the island by accident. They spent their time fending off attacks from the locals until the Royal Navy rescued them. In 1880, Royal Navy officer Maurice Vidal Portman landed on the island with his fleet. All the inhabitants fled, but 4 children were too slow and were captured. These children became very ill and were returned to their tribe. Since then, the locals have associated outsiders with disease. North Sentinel Island is considered one of the places that very little is known about. The exact population and their daily lives are unknown due to their extreme isolation. India tries to protect the island and its people from external interference, but those who attempt to get close are at real risk. The most isolated country in the world. Speaking of places that aren't welcoming to tourists, North Korea is one of the most isolated countries in the world. After the Korean War ended about 70 years ago, the country was divided into North and South Korea. The North became a communist state and isolated itself from the world. In North Korea, the government controls everything, from the media to communication methods. People there can't own computers or use the internet without special permission from the government. And even then, they only have very limited access to specific, heavily monitored websites. The regime tries to present leader Kim Jong-un as a superhuman figure, spreading news claiming he has discovered cures for cancer and can control the weather. Tourism in North Korea exists, but is very limited and under strict supervision. Tourists must travel in groups accompanied by government guides, and they can't roam freely. The regime focuses on presenting a positive and idealized image of the country, which means tourists see a very limited part of the real life there. The most isolated oasis. From North Korea to North Africa, Siwa Oasis in Egypt is one of the most isolated oases in the world. Although it's part of Egypt, it has its own language and culture. The people of Siwa speak a Berber language and live their lives far from the hustle and bustle of other Egyptian cities. This oasis is known for its natural beauty and hot springs, and due to its remote location, it has retained its traditional and historical character. To reach Siwa, you must travel from Cairo for over 9 hours through deserts and rough roads, making it a difficult destination to access. But once you arrive, you'll find breathtaking nature and hospitable people. Let's leave Siwa and travel to another continent. So far, we've visited places with tropical or warm climates. But what about the north? Welcome to Ittoqqortoormiit in Greenland. This place is so isolated that the guest house there is known as the most remote hotel on Earth. There are no cars, and there's no phone signal. It's the most isolated place an ordinary tourist can reach. Ittoqqortoormiit is one of the most remote communities on Earth. This village was founded in 1925 and relies on hunting and animal husbandry. The The population is very small, and in winter, the temperature drops well below freezing, and the daylight hours are very short. The challenges the residents face are tough, but they're accustomed to living in harsh conditions. Let's go to the northernmost place. But if you want to go even further north, you can visit Alert in Canada. It is the northernmost continuously inhabited place in the world. Getting there isn't easy. This place isn't a village or a town, but a military base for the Canadian Armed Forces. In 2018, there were 80 people living there, 800 kilometers away from the nearest community. Even by plane, it would take at least an hour to reach the nearest city. Alert is known as the closest inhabited place to the North Pole. This base is used by Canadian forces to monitor activities in the polar region and to intercept radio communications. Life there is extremely difficult due to the harsh weather conditions and the distance from the rest of the world. However, despite this, the people living there are accustomed to life in extraordinary conditions and rely on each other for everything. Let's go to the most remote research station near the isolated town of Alert lies Summit Station, one of the most remote research stations in the world. This station is located on top of Greenland's ice sheet, and due to the harsh weather conditions, it isn't permanently staffed. Scientists go there to study climate change and the ice environment, but they only stay for short periods because of the difficulty of living in such a place. The highest town in the world. Speaking of high places, have you ever wondered about the highest human settlement in the world? La Rinconada is a remote village in the Peruvian Andes. At 5 kilometers above the mountains, people there work in mines under harsh conditions, all hoping to find gold. This village suffers from significant problems like poverty and pollution, and most of the people living there work in gold mines under dangerous and difficult conditions. Life in La Rinconada is extremely tough, and the oxygen levels are low due to the high altitude, but the people there cling to the hope of finding a fortune that will change their lives. Snake Island, Brazil. Another isolated place in Latin America is Snake Island in Brazil, which might be the most hostile place on Earth. No one lives there, and that's because between 2,000 and 4,000 highly venomous snakes inhabit the island. The island is closed to the public, and the Brazilian government prohibits visits due to the dangerous snakes present. These snakes are known for their potent venom, which can kill a human in a very short time, making the island one of the most dangerous places on the planet. Scientific research conducted on the island is heavily regulated, and only specialized researchers are allowed entry. The most isolated island, Bouvet Island. If that's not remote enough for you, try reaching Bouvet Island. It's the most isolated, uninhabited island in the world because it's the farthest place from any other land on Earth. This island is located in the South Atlantic Ocean, and the nearest land is the coast of Antarctica, about 1,700 kilometers away. Bouvet Island is uninhabited by humans, but scientists visit it to study seabirds and the rare wildlife there. The island is covered in snow and ice most of the year, and the weather conditions are extremely harsh. Traveling to the island is a big and difficult adventure due to the distance and challenging weather conditions. The most isolated place on Earth, Point Nemo. If that's still not remote enough for you, you can take it a step further. The most isolated place on Earth is Point Nemo. It's not an island or a piece of land, but a specific point in the Pacific Ocean. It's the farthest point in the ocean from any land. It's 2,688 kilometers from the nearest land in every direction. Point Nemo is also known as the Spacecraft Cemetery because this is where satellites and spacecraft are sent to crash after their missions end. The place is so isolated that the closest humans to it are the astronauts on the International Space Station when they pass overhead. We actually made a video about it on our channel. And that's it for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon. See you